You're listening to the Slavic Literature Pod, your shelf help guide to all things Slavic. I'm Cameron Lalana.
And I'm Matt Gerasimovich.
And today we're covering Part 1, Chapter 69 of Vasily Grossman's Life and Fate, talking a little bit about revolution, and also the opposite of that, the imposition of dictatorial power over people. Lots of fun times in the camps. Is there anywhere in this chapter that you'd like to begin from our burglar from Hamburg, or with our erstwhile
shutting us down?
I wish I could say that was intended, but unfortunately, my brain just auto-corrected that.
Yep. Yes, we can start with the burglar from Hamburg. We're thinking this is pronounced Kaiser, but we're not 100% sure on that. Pronouncing it keys just looks wrong, sounds wrong. But
if we want to cover all our bases, I can go back and forth between the two.
Perfect. No, it doesn't matter. He's just this giant brute of a man, basically, that has what would probably normally be considered as like a bad job of transporting prisoners to and from places, but he seems to get some pleasure from it, and you have this kind of like nasty scenes of him making the prisoners sing as they're being marched to their either to their deaths or to their respective camps, and the way that he kind of rationalizes the violence is by putting it in very pedestrian terms, like if he's going to shoot somebody in the head, it's emptying a coffee bean into someone's head. If someone's going to be euthanized, it's a small dose of elixir, and so it's just kind of like it's an interesting look at what I'm pretty sure there's an essay actually on this that I keep meaning to bring onto the main podcast episodes about the way that sort of fascism and really violent totalitarian states kind of they sort of develop their own kind of lingo almost around that, kind of skirts around what are like very violent things. And this is a personal example of it, but there might be I don't know. My guess is for the Nazis, there was more bureaucratic administrative speak that existed that was not necessarily there to like mask what they were doing because they knew what they were doing, but to just kind of operate on a different level that sort of disguised it in speech to make it seem not as brutal as what it was, even though they all knew that that's basically what was going on, more or less. So that's just kind of an interesting note there, and I want to go back and find that essay to talk about it because I liked it. I remember liking it. That's where I was going to start.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a great topic to start on, the logics of fascism. We've talked a lot about how fascism has been portrayed. I think for the most part in this novel, we haven't been engaging with what is fascism. We've been talking about it as this deleterious force, as something that is antithetical to human life itself, to human freedom, all of that. But I think so far we have had less examination of the logics of fascism than we had in say, Stalingrad. And here we have this on this, I think in Stalingrad it was a little bit more of a high-level theorization, and here we get this very personal sort of, what kind of soul do you have to operate, to not only operate, but to excel under fascism?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's notable that Keys and or Kaiser is specifically described as sort of our attention is drawn to his inhumanity. Kaiser's brown eyes simply weren't those of a human being. They seemed to be made of plastic or some yellowish brown resin. When they took on an expression of merriment, they inspired terror. And as Kaiser is carrying out his job, Grossman writes, Kaiser was well aware of his own superiority over the artists, revolutionaries, scholars, generals, and members of religious sects and the barricades. It wasn't just a matter of the coffee bean or the elixir. It was an innate feeling of superiority that brought him real joy. Nor was it a matter of his huge physical strength, his ability to brush obstacles aside, to knock people off their feet or smash through steel with his bare hands. No, what he admired in himself were the complex enigmas of his own soul. There was something very special in his anger, something in the play of his moods that transcended logic. So you have sort of this, I think, this engagement with, you know, what are the kind of logics that would allow you to do what Kaiser does? And I think here we have two levels. One, we have a place of superiority, which I think Grossman has always tried to operate as sort of this describe as coming from a place of inferiority. Kaiser isn't anyone particularly special, but he gets to be special in amidst all these thinkers, all these great people of great achievement, all these people who have dedicated their lives to maybe some tough religious. I imagine if they've undertaken some sort of religious limitations in their lives to do this. But he, among them all, is special because he has power over them and because there is a special enigma in his own soul. And I think the reality is even though he's described by his deepness, he's really characterized by his incredible shallowness. There is a complex enigma in his own soul because there's really not that much to find, and it's easier to think of your soul being deep and and mysterious rather than someone might just be pretty shallow and they can't accept that about themselves. And I think this is sort of a step forward for Grossman, maybe in talking about fascism, not just talking about fascism as insecurity, but talking about this idea of fascism as something which makes, we had that conversation a few chapters ago about sort of not contrasting, but arguing that socialist realism and individualism were this hyper individualism were sides of the same coin. I think you kind of see this interesting line of argumentation here, which is that this hyper focus on the individual on Kaiser himself means that he's unable to see others in such a way that eliminates their humanity. So I think this is an interesting engagement in building on Grossman's ideas that he's spoken about previously in regards to fascism.
Yeah, and then you get this slight bit of resistance in this chapter, which is kind of interesting in light of some of the previous chapters. But you get Yershov, who, when he doesn't sing, he instead punches our brute in the face, and kind of earns his respect, and he gets a sort of privileged spot in the barracks, and has kind of I don't want to say he really gets any perks from that per se. But yeah, it's kind of discussed how he gets a sort of slightly preferential treatment, or kind of engenders a sense of respect from our brutish fascist here. And it's kind of I'm not saying this is necessarily like a model that should have been followed, or would have been a winning strategy, but it just seems kind of like, in light of the conversations where from maybe, was it 2 chapters ago, even 1 chapter ago, where people are sort of like, well, we can't resist, we can't do anything because they're just going to kill us if we do that. And then to have this, I mean, to punch an officer in the face and then earn his respect is a different outcome than would have been expected, right? I think probably if there was too much of it, people would have been getting killed, but not for this chapter. And that kind of cements Yershov as the leader in this camp, and he's starting to put together his own revolution, basically, within the camp, which we will see how that goes.
Indeed. We got our own section of the Comintern here in the camp, as Mostovskoy says, with just 2 members, one of them not even a communist. But
yeah, I'd love to really be able to tell you that this is all going to go well, but I don't know.
Yeah, well,
shaky start.
It's life and fate, so you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe that's a good spot to leave it for today.
I think that's as good as ever. In which case, you will hear from us again soon.